Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time to one of the most brutal chapters in history. Imagine you're standing at the base of a medieval fortress, staring up at its towering stone walls. The air is thick with smoke, the distant echoes of battle are already ringing in your ears, and you're filled with that gnawing sense of dread that comes with knowing that in the coming days, maybe weeks, the fate of everyone inside that fortress will rest on your shoulders. These are the moments before a siege, and let's be honest, you probably won't survive this. But for now, we'll ease into it, drawing in that cool night air, feeling the ground beneath your boots, and watching as the enemy builds their lines just out of sight. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Feel free to let me know where you are and what time it is where you are, share your location, and let's all get in the zone together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. A siege isn't something that just happens overnight. It's a long, drawn-out process, and in this moment, standing before the fortress gates, you know that this could be a battle of attrition, a test of willpower and survival that could take months. The first thing that hits you is the sheer scale of it all. It's like looking at a mountain made of stone, a fortress designed to withstand everything from arrow rain to catapult projectiles. And yet, despite its intimidating size, you realize that it's also vulnerable. Just like any structure, no matter how mighty, the right pressure at the right point can make it collapse. That's where you come in. You're not here to wage the battle with swords and shields, not at first. Your job is to wait. Wait until the right moment when the enemy, tired and hungry, is just close enough for you to strike with deadly force. But first, you'll need to make sure that every inch of this fortress is properly sieged. The march towards the fortress feels endless. Your legs ache from the long days on the move. The sun's rays have drained every ounce of energy from your body, and the dust clings to your skin, making it feel like you're walking through a perpetual cloud of grit. You've been on the move for days, maybe even weeks, and as you finally approach the fortress, you can see it clearly now, rising against the horizon, a symbol of everything you've been working towards. The air feels heavier as the wind shifts, and despite your exhaustion, something stirs inside you. This is it, the thing you've been waiting for, the moment when the enemy is finally within your grasp. You're no longer simply traveling to a destination, you're on the brink of engaging in something historic. But as you stand there, taking in the view, you know this won't be a quick or easy task. Not even close. Tents start going up along the perimeter of the camp. Every man and woman in your unit is setting up their makeshift homes, sharpening weapons, and preparing for what could be a months-long ordeal. You see the engineers constructing wooden platforms for the trebuchets and catapults. These massive weapons, designed to hurl stones the size of your head, will rain down on the walls of the fortress until they start to crumble. You also see the supply wagons unloading food, water, and other vital resources. This is your life, now long days of preparation, punctuated by the occasional loud crash of an enemy stone breaking against the ground. There's little luxury in this kind of warfare, and there's even less room for comfort. Every night, you sleep beneath the open sky, hearing the distant sounds of enemy forces preparing for their own assault. You might be tired, but rest is a luxury you don't have time for. As the days blur together, you begin to notice the subtle shifts in atmosphere. The initial excitement starts to wear off. The excitement of engaging in battle, the rush of adrenaline from the marching starts to give way to to a much grimmer reality. You're not here for a quick fight. You're here for a prolonged, bloody struggle of attrition. There's nothing glamorous about it. It's grueling, exhausting, and painful. And, as you begin to realize, it's going to test every ounce of your endurance, every bit of your mental strength. You'll need to be patient. That's one of the hardest lessons of a siege: patience. It's not about rushing in with swords drawn. It's about waiting, watching, and slowly chipping away at the defenses, just like the enemy is doing to you. They're waiting too, waiting for you to make the first move, waiting for you to make a mistake. The trebuchets that sit in the distance are a marvel of engineering. You watch in awe as they load massive boulders into their cradles, aiming them at the walls of the fortress. The tension builds as the massive ropes are pulled, creaking with strain, until they release. And then, the sky is filled with the sound of a massive stone sailing through the air, its trajectory aimed directly at the fortress walls. It's a terrifying sight, especially as you watch the stone strike the walls with such force that you can almost feel the impact in your bones. These weapons, built with the intention of inflicting maximum damage, are capable of tearing down entire sections of the fortress. But it's not an instant process. The walls might crack, but they won't collapse in one shot. It will take time. It will take patience. And every day, that patience will be tested. The night is always the hardest part. You've spent your entire day working, preparing, waiting, and now, as darkness falls, the exhaustion sets in. You lie on your back, staring up at the stars, unable to escape the weight of your thoughts. The smell of food cooking in nearby campfires is almost unbearable, especially when you know that, inside the fortress, there's no food left. The defenders are suffering, too. You can hear their cries in the distance. You can hear the sound of their own trebuchets launching stones back toward your camp. It's a war of attrition, and every day it feels like the battle is being drawn out further. There's no easy end in sight, and that's the terrifying part. You're stuck in this battle, just waiting for the moment when one side will finally give way. You're not the only one feeling it. Everyone in your camp is growing weary. But for now, there's nothing to do but wait, and wait some more. The days begin to blend together, each one a repetition of the last. The initial thrill of setting up camp, of watching the trebuchets launch their massive stones at the fortress, has worn thin, and now you're left with the reality of the siege. The slow grind of endurance. The harsh sunlight beats down during the day, and the freezing cold at night feels like a constant reminder that you're far from any semblance of comfort. The soldiers, who were once eager, now move with less enthusiasm, their faces drawn and tired. You find yourself spending long hours either reinforcing the camp or watching the fortress from afar, knowing the longer this drags on, the more desperate the enemy becomes. It's a psychological battle as much as a physical one. Each day, the tension rises as you wait for anything to give. You're no longer certain who's more trapped, you or the defenders inside the fortress. But then, you're reminded of the stakes. The enemy in the fortress is not going to give. They may be starving, but they have their own siege tactics. And you can't forget the other side's hunger, their hunger to survive, their hunger to break free. There's a strange kind of rhythm that develops in this long standoff. The food rations inside the castle dwindle down, and every day the defenders grow more frail, their resistance more desperate. You're aware that your side is just as exhausted as they are, Every resource you can hoard is crucial now more so than ever before. The engineers in your camp are hard at work creating new tools of destruction, all designed to break the walls just a little more. The excitement that was there when you first arrived has turned into something darker, something deeper. You're beginning to realize that this isn't just about overcoming the enemy's defenses. It's about survival. It's about holding on long enough for the inevitable to happen. The siege engines grow louder, their mechanisms working overtime to launch one boulder after another at the fortress walls. Each stone strikes with an ominous sound, shaking the earth beneath you. These are the weapons that can turn the tide of battle, but they won't do so quickly. The process of breaking down the walls is slow, agonizingly slow. But you know that every impact, every strike from the trebuchets is wearing down the fortress a little bit more. The defenders are too focused on the destruction to see the bigger picture. The walls may hold for now, but the slow erosion of their defenses is inevitable. It's just a matter of time. The morale inside the fortress is weakening too. What you don't see from the outside is just how quickly desperation sets in when people are cut off from the outside world, isolated from any hope of relief. The defenders are running out of options, and as you watch, you realize that despite the grueling nature of the siege, your side holds the advantage. All you have to do now is wait. It's easy to forget how much goes into preparing for a prolonged siege like this, while you and the rest of the soldiers in the camp are stuck in your daily routines of maintaining camp, organizing supplies, and reinforcing the siege lines. There's an entire underground effort taking place just beneath your feet. The engineers are working tirelessly, digging tunnels beneath the fortress, trying to find weak points in the castle's foundation. These tunnels are being dug in secret, carefully hidden from the eyes of the defenders. But the work isn't easy. Digging through dirt and stone is exhausting, and there's always the risk that the enemy might notice the changes in the ground, the subtle shifts that hint at something below. And then there are the rats. These rodents, small and seemingly inconsequential, have become a much bigger issue than you ever anticipated. They're everywhere in the camp, scurrying through the streets of tents, feeding off the scraps of food that get left behind. It's maddening, knowing that even the simplest tasks are being interrupted by these little creatures. They're more than just a nuisance, they're a health risk. With every rat comes the potential for disease, and it's something everyone in the camp is keenly aware of. You might be stuck here for weeks, maybe longer, but if you catch something from a rat, you'll find yourself sidelined long before you ever get the chance to break through the fortress. Inside the fortress, the defenders are also dealing with their own set of horrors. They can't ignore the gradual wear and tear the siege is causing. The food rations are running low, and the water supply is beginning to dwindle. The defenders have done everything they can to conserve resources, but with each passing day, it becomes harder to maintain any semblance of normalcy. There's talk among the soldiers of revolt, of surrender, but it's clear that the leadership won't allow that to happen, not yet. They hold out hope that something will turn the tide, that reinforcements will arrive. But you both know that reinforcements are not coming. The siege is too tight, the defenses too strong. The only thing that remains is who will hold out longer, you and your camp, or the defenders inside the walls. The tension is palpable. As each day drags on, it's easy to start losing track of time. What is a week when it feels like an eternity? What's a day when it could stretch on forever? The camp is a living, breathing entity, one that shifts and changes based on the movements of the enemy. Every day brings new reports of the enemy's attempts to break free, to mount counterattacks or sabotage your camp. But nothing seems to work. Their best efforts are thwarted, one after another. They're fighting back, but it's not enough. You can feel it in the air, this sense of impending collapse. The enemy is holding on, but their grip is loosening. The final showdown is coming, but it's still unclear how it will play out. For now, you can only wait in the evenings. When the sun starts to set and the chill begins to creep into the air, you find yourself staring up at the fortress once again. It's hard to remember why you're here sometimes, why all this pain, all this suffering is worth it. But then you hear the sound of the trebuchets in the distance. You see the stones raining down once more, and you remember, this is the price of war. This is what it takes to conquer. The fortress isn't going to give up easily, but neither are you. The days blur together as the siege drags on. The air feels thick with dust and frustration. You've grown accustomed to the clanking of weapons being sharpened, the groaning of carts laden with food, and the constant hum of activity around the camp. Everyone is getting worn out, but that's the nature of a siege. You might have thought that this would be a quick and glorious victory when you first arrived blasting through the fortress walls with catapults and storming the gates, but now you understand that a siege isn't about glory. It's about waiting, the slow, painful march of time dragging you deeper into its grip. Each morning when you wake up, you're reminded that today will be just like the one before it. The same rituals, the same routines. You prepare your weapons, you check the fortifications, you eat your sparse meals, and you wait. You wait for something to change. The trebuchets continue their relentless assault on the fortress walls. Each time one of those massive stones crashes into the stonework, it's like a momentary tremor that shakes the earth beneath your feet. The sound is deafening, echoing through the camp like a thunderclap. But you know deep down that these attacks are wearing the walls down slowly but surely. The castle might seem invincible at first glance, but with every stone that strikes, every boulder that hits, you know you're one step closer to breaking through. The idea of the fortress crumbling under the constant barrage is a comforting thought, but there's something that nags at you. The defenders inside aren't just waiting for the inevitable. They're fighting back. They're digging in their heels, strengthening their own defenses, and preparing for what they know is coming. They're doing everything they can to survive, just like you are. The siege might feel like a slow-motion disaster, but inside, it's a battle of wits and resources. And then, there are the tunnels. These aren't the kind of tunnels you see in modern warfare, built with advanced machinery and sophisticated planning. No, these are primitive, dangerous tunnels dug by hand, each one a potential death trap. You're not sure who thought of it, but the idea was simple: undermine the foundation of the fortress from below. Tunnels were dug secretly, in the dead of night, hidden from the eyes of the defenders. They're narrow, cramped, and filthy, but they hold a potential weapon that could break the siege wide open. If these tunnels managed to reach the heart of the castle's foundation, they could collapse entire sections of the walls, or, at the very least, create enough chaos for an all-out assault. But that's the problem. You don't know if the tunnels will work. You don't know if they'll even make it through without being discovered. And if the defenders catch wind of it, they'll have their own countermeasures ready. Tunnels, after all, are a double-edged sword. As the siege stretches on, the mental toll begins to creep in. You may have prepared for the physical demands of the fight, but the psychological strain is something you weren't ready for. The days drag on with no sign of relief. You wake up, you go through the motions, and then you sleep fitfully, only to wake up and do it all again. It's exhausting, both physically and mentally. The monotony of the siege is breaking you down, but there's no other choice but to keep going. The stakes are too high. Inside the fortress, the defenders are in the same position, but there's something different about their fight. They're not waiting. They're pushing back, scraping together any defense they can manage. The longer the siege goes on, the more desperate their efforts become. You hear rumors from the spies in your camp talk of secret alliances, messages sent out in the night, and desperate plans to break through your lines. You don't know how much of it is true, but the thought lingers in the back of your mind. They're not giving up. Not yet. And neither are you. Despite the growing tension, there's something undeniably fascinating about the way both sides are adapting to the situation. The defenders are using every trick in the book, every resource at their disposal to hold you off. They're using fire to burn the siege engines. They're sending their own forces out to launch surprise attacks on your camp. And they're doing everything they can to maintain control of their fortress. It's a high-stakes game, and no one is ready to fold just yet. The only thing that can break the deadlock is time. But time, as you've learned, is a fickle thing. It stretches on endlessly when you're stuck in the middle of it, and yet, when the final blow finally falls, you'll wonder how it all passed so quickly. You can feel the pressure building with every passing day. The tension in the air is palpable. Everyone in your camp is waiting for the moment when it all comes to a head. In the midst of this, there are still moments of quiet. Those rare, precious moments when you can step away from the chaos, if only for a few minutes. You can hear the sounds of the camp soldiers laughing around campfires, engineers discussing their next move, and the soft rustling of wind through the tents. But even in these moments of calm, the siege is never far from your mind. It looms like a shadow, always present. And then there's the food situation. It's starting to get dire. You've heard that the defenders inside the fortress are resorting to eating whatever they can, phrases, spoiled food, anything that might keep them alive a little longer. The lack of food is taking its toll, making everyone more irritable, more desperate. The same is true on your side. You've run low on supplies, and though there's some relief with the occasional supply shipment, it's never enough. Food is a commodity, and when it runs out, everything else starts to break down. You start to wonder, if this goes on much longer, will there be anyone left to fight? The tension only continues to mount as the siege drags on. You find yourself staring at the fortress once again, the walls growing more and more weathered with each strike from your trebuchets. They're starting to show cracks, subtle at first, but they're there. Every day brings more cracks, more wear, more damage. The end is approaching, but no one knows exactly when it will come. The weight, the uncertainty, is eating away at everyone, and you can feel it in the air, this sense of inevitability, as though the walls of the fortress will finally crumble under the weight of time itself. You can almost taste it, the victory, the release from this exhausting war of attrition. It's coming, you can feel it. But until then, you wait, and you keep fighting. As the days wear on, you begin to notice the subtle signs of change, both in your surroundings and in your own psyche. The initial excitement of the siege has long faded into something darker, something more oppressive. There's a quiet dread in the air now. You can hear it in the conversations around the camp, in the soft murmurs between soldiers and engineers, in the way people move with less energy, less enthusiasm. The once vibrant buzz of activity has turned into a routine, a slow shuffle of labor and maintenance. of tightening fortifications and waiting for the next stone to strike the fortress walls. The days stretch out endlessly, each one more like the last than the one before. It's a strange thing, this kind of war. There's no immediate glory, no quick resolution. You're caught in the middle of a slow-moving machine that grinds away at your resolve, bit by bit. It's a mental game, as much as a physical one. And right now, the fortress's defenders have the same advantage you do: time. Time to recover, to regroup, to plan their own next move. The longer the siege lasts, the more it feels like both sides are caught in a race to see who can hold out longer, who will crack first. Inside the fortress, it's even worse. The defenders are starting to look like shadows of their former selves. You can see the exhaustion written on their faces even from the camp. It's hard not to feel a twinge of sympathy for them. After all, you're not much better off yourself. But then, you remember, they're the ones who chose to stay inside those walls, to resist the inevitable. They've made their bed, and now they have to lie in it. You can almost hear the faint cries of hunger from within the fortress, the desperation in the air. The food they once had is gone, and now they're forced to survive on whatever scraps they can find. The same fate awaits you if the siege drags on too long. But you can't afford to think that way. Not now, not when you're so close to breaking through. The Trebuchets continue their relentless assault, each stone that strikes the walls a reminder that time is on your side. The damage is beginning to show. The fortress isn't as invincible as it once seemed. Each day, the cracks grow wider, the walls weaker. But it's still not enough. You need more. There's a strange moment of clarity that strikes you when you're standing in front of one of the trebuchets, watching the engineers prepare the next round of stones. The ground shakes with the force of the release, and you see the boulder hurtle through the air once again. It's an odd sensation, watching the stones fall with such force, knowing that every impact brings you one step closer to victory. It's not a quick victory, not a glamorous one. There's no hero's charge, no dramatic final battle. It's a battle of attrition, of patience and endurance. But in that moment, as you watch the boulder arc through the air, you realize something. This is the price of war. The endless hours of waiting, the constant threat of death, the slow build-up of tension, it all leads to this. To the moment when the fortress finally gives way, when the defenders inside are too weak to fight back, when the walls crumble under the weight of time itself. The engineers are working harder than ever now, pushing their machines to the limit. You see them huddled together, discussing new tactics, new ways to break through the defenses faster. The problem with sieges is that there's no one solution, no magic formula for success. Everything is a gamble. You never know if your next move will work or if it will backfire. It's a constant game of trial and error. The catapults might work one day and fail the next. The trebuchets might break the walls, but only if you're lucky enough to hit the right spot. The only thing you can rely on is your patience, your ability to withstand the pressure, the uncertainty. You've learned that the hard way. The food supply is dwindling, and the soldiers are beginning to show signs of fatigue. They're not just tired from the physical labor, they're mentally drained. The waiting has taken its toll. It's hard to stay motivated when you don't know when it will end, when you're stuck in a cycle of repetition, hoping for a breakthrough. That might never come. As the siege stretches on, you begin to notice a change in the mood of the camp. There's a quiet unease among the soldiers. Some have started to voice concerns about the length of the siege, about the state of the food supplies, about the growing number of injuries. Others are beginning to ask the same question you've been wondering. How much longer can this go on? The sense of desperation is starting to build. Every day that passes without a decisive breakthrough is another day where the enemy might be plotting their own retaliation. You've seen how quickly desperation can turn into recklessness. How easily the pressure of a prolonged siege can cause people to snap. Some soldiers are beginning to take matters into their own hands, sneaking out to launch attacks on the fortress's supply lines, hoping for a quick win. But these small skirmishes rarely result in any real change. They're just distractions, things that only serve to prolong the inevitable. You realize that you can't afford to get caught up in these distractions. You have to focus, keep your eyes on the prize. The fortress is almost within reach, and all you have to do now is keep pushing. In the evenings, when the camp finally quiets down, you find yourself lying on the cold ground, staring up at the stars. The noise of the camp fades into the background, and for a few moments, it's just you and the silence. It's hard to know if the silence is a blessing or a curse. The weight of everything that's happening presses down on you. The siege feels endless, like it could drag on forever, and yet, deep down, you know that it can't. Something will break. Either the fortress will fall, or the defenders will surrender. One way or another, this will end. The question is, when? You think about the soldiers inside, about the hunger they must be feeling, about the fear that must be creeping into their minds. They're just like you, stuck in a situation they can't control, trying to survive, trying to hold on. It's not about winning anymore. It's about who can outlast the other. And in the end, you know that patience will be the key to survival. As long as you can keep holding on, keep pushing forward, you'll eventually see the end of this siege. You just have to be patient. And that's the hardest part of all. The days continue to slip away, like grains of sand in an hourglass that no one can see or control. Every day is more of the same. You wake up to the sound of the trebuchets firing, the distant thuds reverberating through the camp. You spend your time either maintaining the siege lines, watching for signs of weakness in the fortress, or helping to distribute rations that seem to grow smaller by the day. You've grown used to the sounds of the camp, the clinking of armor, the murmur of conversations, the creaking of carts and wheels as supplies are unloaded. But despite the outward normalcy, there's a constant undercurrent of tension. The weight is becoming unbearable. Each hour that passes feels like it stretches into eternity, and you can't help but wonder how much longer you and the rest of your comrades can endure this. The monotony is slowly taking its toll on your mind. You've learned that siege warfare is a war of attrition in every sense. It's not just about breaking down walls. It's about breaking down spirits. It's about forcing your enemy to crumble under the weight of time. And yet, despite all of this, there's still that sliver of hope. A tiny part of you that knows, even if you're exhausted, that the end is nearing. It has to be. Meanwhile, inside the fortress, the situation is equally grim, if not worse. You've heard rumors, through the spies' whispers, of famine, disease, and mounting tension among the defenders. They're running out of food, and what little they have left is hardly enough to sustain them. The last remnants of their morale are starting to crack. They're not fighting to win anymore. They're fighting to survive, and that desperation is becoming apparent. You can hear the occasional shout from inside the walls, the sound of people desperately trying to maintain some sense of order. But it's clear that things are starting to unravel, and yet they hold on as you do. Both sides are locked in. This brutal cycle of waiting and hoping, both too afraid to make the first move. But despite the growing desperation inside, you know they won't give up easily. Not until they have nothing left to fight with. The constant barrage of stones from the trebuchets continues, their enormous weight battering the walls of the fortress with an unrelenting rhythm. It's hard not to feel a sense of awe when you see the stones fly through the air. They're monstrous projectiles, each one capable of tearing down a section of the wall with a single hit. But as the siege wears on, you start to wonder if these weapons are really enough to win. The stones strike the walls, but they don't seem to do enough damage to bring them down entirely. Every impact leaves a mark, a small crack in the stone, but the fortress stands tall, unyielding. It's frustrating. Each strike feels like a promise of victory, but it's a slow promise one that's difficult to feel in the moment. You've heard stories from past sieges about walls that stood strong for months, even years, before they finally fell. The thought makes your stomach turn. How long can you keep this up? How long can you stand the pressure before the weight of the siege crushes you? And then there are the tunnels. You've heard about them from the engineers in your camp. They've been working feverishly, digging their way beneath the fortress walls in secret, hoping to find a weak point, a crack they can exploit. But tunnels are dangerous. They're uncertain. You don't know if they'll work, or if they'll even make it to the fortress's heart. There's always the risk of the enemy discovering the tunnels before they can be used. And if that happens, you'll be stuck in the same spot, waiting for the walls to crumble the old-fashioned way through the slow, grinding assault of trebuchets and catapults. But despite the uncertainty, you hold on to hope. The tunnels might work. They could be the key to ending this siege once and for all. The engineers are optimistic, but you can't help but wonder if their optimism is merely a way to keep morale up. No one knows for sure if the tunnels will work. But like everything in a siege, it's a gamble. And right now, that's all you've got. As the siege continues, you begin to feel the weight of time in ways you hadn't anticipated. You've heard stories from other soldiers' dailies of sieges that stretched on for years, of men who lost their minds waiting for something, anything, to break the stalemate. And now, you can feel that same insanity creeping in at the edges. It's not a sudden thing, but a slow, insidious slide into madness. You catch yourself staring at the walls for too long, watching the cracks form with each new strike, your mind drifting to darker thoughts. What if it never ends? What if you're stuck here forever, caught in this endless cycle of waiting, attacking, and waiting some more? It's a terrifying thought, one that gnaws at the back of your mind, but you try to push it away. You can't afford to let it take hold. You can't afford to let yourself break down like that. Not now, not when the end is so close. You have to keep pushing forward. Keep your focus on the goal. The walls will eventually fall. The fortress will eventually surrender. All you have to do is wait a little longer. And yet, even with all of this uncertainty, there's something undeniably human about this entire experience. The siege is not just a battle of armies, but a battle of wills. It's about endurance. It's about outlasting the other side, holding out longer than they can. The longer the siege lasts, the more it becomes clear that this is not a fight for territory or glory, it's a fight for survival. You're not here to claim the castle. You're here to outlast the defenders, to make them surrender or starve. It's a brutal reality, but it's the truth of the situation. No one will win this battle with honor or pride. They will win it with persistence. And as you continue your watch, as you keep an eye on the fortress walls and the trebuchets firing, you can't help but feel the weight of that persistence. It's exhausting, It's draining, but it's the only way forward. So, you keep going, you keep waiting, and you keep hoping, because hope is all that's left. And sometimes, in a siege like this, hope is enough. Days blur into each other as the siege drags on, stretching the fabric of time to its breaking point. The tension in the air has thickened, like a constant fog, and you begin to lose track of where the days begin and end. The fortress seems as distant as ever, yet you know that it's no farther now than it was yesterday, the day before, or the day before that. The same routine plays out each day: morning check-ins with the officers, repairs on the siege engines, a brief respite during lunch where you try to enjoy the meager rations, and then back to work. Everything is grinding, exhausting, and monotonous. The novelty of the siege has long since evaporated, and the grim reality has settled in. Your body aches from the labor, but it's your mind that feels the strain the most. Each day feels like the last. Each moment stretches longer, and with every hour that passes, it's harder to keep the exhaustion at bay. You catch yourself watching the sky, waiting for something to break, but nothing does. The Trebuchets continue their assault on the walls, the massive stones flying through the air with a force that rattles your bones. Yet despite all of this, the walls remain standing, steadfast in their defiance. It's a cruel reality. Every strike, every crash, feels like it should be the final blow. And yet, the walls hold firm. Inside the fortress, the defenders must be feeling the same sense of stagnation, if not more so. You know their food supplies are running low. The occasional whispers from your spies indicate that their morale is plummeting. What once was a mighty and proud fortress, a symbol of strength, is now a prison. The defenders are tired, desperate, and it shows. The once gleaming walls are now weathered, battered by the relentless bombardment. From the inside, the siege must feel like an endless nightmare of smoke, dust, and fear. The soldiers inside might not have the luxury of the open sky, of feeling the cool evening breeze on their skin. Instead, they're trapped, forced to huddle in the shadow of the stone walls, listening to the unyielding thuds of the trebuchet. But despite their deteriorating state, they won't give up. No, the defenders are resilient. They've been through worse before, and they still hold on to the hope that they can outlast you, that a miracle will arrive. Maybe reinforcements will come. Maybe someone will find a way to breach your lines. But you both know deep down that this hope is becoming increasingly unlikely. The longer the siege lasts, the more it seems like the only outcome is inevitable. Collapse. The fortress, once proud, is now at its breaking point. But so are you. It's strange, the way battles can be equal in their destruction. You're not just fighting for a piece of land, you're fighting for time, for survival. The walls will break, but will you? The siege continues in a maddening cycle. One day fades into the next, and the physical toll of constant labor starts to pile up. You've grown accustomed to the ache in your back, the fatigue that gnaws at your muscles, the constant feeling that your legs might give out under you at any moment. It's not the battle itself that is wearing you down, it's the endless waiting. The quiet moments between the bombardments, when you try to steal a few moments of peace, are only fleeting. You've tried to rest, tried to sleep, but the anxiety and fatigue make it nearly impossible. You can hear the groans of the siege engines in the distance, the low thud of stones crashing against the fortress walls. A constant reminder that there's no escape, no reprieve from the strain. At night, the darkness offers little comfort. It only serves to deepen the sense of isolation. You wonder if it's the same inside the fortress, where the darkness is no longer peaceful but suffocating. For them, every hour must feel like a step closer to their demise. You try to tell yourself that you're just as trapped, just as locked into this battle as they are. It's a shared experience, even though you're on opposite sides. Both of you are fighting for the same thing, to hold on a little longer. It's impossible not to think about the toll this will all take once it's over. You've seen soldiers who arrived in high spirits, eager for battle, and now they shuffle about like ghosts, their faces hollow from exhaustion. It's not just physical fatigue, it's mental and emotional fatigue. The soldiers are beginning to turn on each other, arguing over the smallest things, snapping at one another in moments of short temper. It's easy to see how quickly the strain of a siege can turn allies into enemies, how the slow burn of waiting can ignite the kindling of distrust. You've heard whispers among your fellow soldiers about the possibility of abandoning the siege altogether, of pulling back and waiting for reinforcements before trying again. But no one dares to speak of it too loudly. They know that pulling back now would mean failure, and that failure would be worse than the siege itself. The commanders are firm in their resolve, and they won't let the camp lose hope. The morale might be fragile, but it's still holding together. And as long as the morale holds, so too will the siege. The moment it falters, the moment the belief that this will end cracks, the entire operation could collapse. Inside the fortress, though, that morale has all but vanished. The defenders, cut off from supplies, with their resources running dry, are struggling to keep any semblance of order. You've heard from your spies about the whispers of mutiny among the ranks, of soldiers contemplating surrender, even as their commanders try to hold them together. But the question is, will they surrender before they starve? Or will they wait, hoping for the miracle of reinforcements? As each day passes, it's clear that the fortress is slowly crumbling. Its stone walls have been battered, its defenses are worn thin, and the defenders are growing weaker with each passing day. But you've also seen something in their eyes, something you recognize from your own moments of doubt. The fear of giving up, the fear of surrender, is a universal truth. In a siege, it's something that eats away at you. The longer you wait, the longer you feel the weight of your indecision. For the defenders, the fear of giving in is just as powerful as the fear of dying on the walls. But in the end, someone will give. Someone will make the final choice. The walls might not come down with a crash. It might be the silence of surrender, the quiet giving up of hope that marks the true end of the siege. And yet, even as the fortress weakens, even as the defenders grow desperate, you know that you can't let your guard down. You can't afford to make a mistake now. If the walls do fall, it will be through sheer persistence. It's not the trebuchets, the starvation, or the disease that will win this war. It's the will to keep going, the refusal to stop until victory is assured. In a siege, it's not about fighting harder, it's about outlasting the other side, holding on longer than they can. Time is your ally now. Time and the slow erosion of the fortress's strength. Each day, the cracks widen. You just have to wait a little longer. The rhythm of the siege is like the ticking of an ancient clock, relentless and unyielding. Every day feels like a repeat of the last waking up before the first light of dawn, checking the camp's perimeter, ensuring the siege engines are ready, and, as always, watching the fortress in the distance. The trebuchets continue to hurl their enormous stones, each one seeming like it should be the final blow, but somehow the fortress remains unbroken. Every strike sends a tremor through the earth, the deafening sound of stone hitting stone echoing across the camp. And yet, despite the devastation being wrought by these massive machines, there is a strange stillness in the air. The fortress doesn't fall. The walls hold firm, albeit cracked and battered, but they don't collapse. Not yet. And with each passing day, it feels as though you are all collectively holding your breath, waiting for the moment when everything will break, when the walls will finally give way, and when this long, grueling war will come to an end. But the end seems to be perpetually out of reach. The defenders inside the walls, though starving, though battered, though struggling, still refuse to surrender. They're holding out, and for every moment that they hold on, your side feels the strain. The weight of the waiting, of the constant attacks on the walls, is beginning to wear you all down. The strain is showing in ways it never did before. You notice it in the soldiers' faces. They're thinner now, their eyes dull, their shoulders sagging under the weight of fatigue. Even the most enthusiastic among your comrades are no longer as quick to laugh or joke. They know, as you do, that this isn't a war of skill, it's a war of endurance. The longest wait, the most persistent will win the day. You see them standing there in their armor, staring at the fortress as though willing it to fall with nothing more than their gazes. They want it to end, but no amount of staring will bring it to a close. You've all learned that patience is a battlefield of its own. The siege engines continue their work, but there's a weariness that creeps into their actions. Even the Trebuchets, once so reliable in their terrifying power, now seem like worn-out machines, creaking with age, their ropes fraying, the men operating them growing less sure of their aim. Yet, the cycle must continue. There's no choice but to keep pushing forward. The food rations are running low, and though there are occasional deliveries, they never seem to be enough. The camp is growing thinner, both in resources and in spirit. You've heard it from others, the tension, the whispers of abandoning the siege, of pulling back and waiting for reinforcements. But no one speaks of this aloud. It's an unspoken fear, one that everyone feels, but no one dares to voice. Number one can afford to consider retreat. Not yet, not when the fortress is so close, so near its breaking point. So, everyone keeps going, even as the strain begins to show in their eyes, in the way their footsteps falter. And then there are the tunnels. The engineers are working around the clock now, digging beneath the walls of the fortress, hoping to find a weak point, an area of the foundation they can exploit. The tunnels are growing longer with each passing day, though the work is slow and difficult. The air in the tunnels is thick, damp, and suffocating, and the men working in them come out covered in dust and sweat, their faces grim and exhausted. There are rumors among the soldiers in the camp that the tunnels are close, that they're almost there, but no one knows for sure. The tunnels are a gamble. No one can say for certain if they'll even make it to the heart of the fortress, let alone if they'll be able to breach the walls. But still, the work continues, because it's the only option left. If the trebuchets aren't working, if the walls refuse to fall, then the tunnels are the only hope. You've heard stories of how tunnels were used to bring down entire castles. In the past, how a small spark in the right place could bring down a fortress that had withstood years of assault. But for all the hope they offer, there's still the lingering doubt. Will the defenders discover them before the engineers can finish their work? Will they find a way to collapse the tunnels, to thwart this final attempt? The uncertainty gnaws at you, but you push it aside. You've learned that doubt is a luxury in a siege. The only thing that matters is getting through it. Whether by trebuchets or tunnels, the fortress must fall. It's the only way forward, and so you wait. You wait for the moment when the defenders will finally surrender, or when their defenses will break and the gates will fall. The tension in the camp is palpable. Everyone feels it, the restless energy, the sense that something is about to shift. The siege has been dragging on for so long that the idea of it ending seems almost surreal. And yet, in the back of your mind, you know that the end is coming. Whether it comes from the collapse of the walls or from the exhaustion of the defenders, it's only a matter of time. You feel it in your bones. The defenders inside are running out of food, out of hope, and out of options. And yet, they continue to fight. They continue to hold on, refusing to give in. You don't know what they're waiting for. Maybe they're hoping for reinforcements, or maybe they're just waiting for their own will to break. But as the days continue to pass, you can see it in their eyes, too. They're tired. Their resolve is crumbling, even as the fortress itself begins to crack under the pressure. You start to wonder, not if the walls will fall, but when. When will it all come to an end? In your quieter moments, when the sound of the trebuchets fades into the background and the camp quiets down for the night, you catch yourself thinking about the aftermath. What happens when the siege finally ends? What will be left of this place, of you, of the soldiers around you? The cost of this prolonged war has been more than just physical. It's been mental. It's been emotional. Everyone in the camp has lost something to the siege. Some have lost family members, others their sense of peace. You've all sacrificed something in the name of victory, and no one knows yet what the true cost will be. But it doesn't matter. Not now. You have to focus on the end. The moment the walls fall, the gates open, and the siege is over. The defenders will either surrender or be defeated. One way or another, this will end. It must. You can almost feel the fortress trembling beneath the strain. The cracks in the walls are deepening. It's only a matter of time now. And when that time comes, everything will change. The end is approaching. You know it, they know it. The siege is almost over. The nights have begun to grow colder, and you feel it deep in your bones. The camp, which once hummed with the energy of anticipation, now feels eerily quiet. The usual bustle of soldiers sharpening weapons and preparing their gear has slowed down. Even the engineers seem to have lost some of their earlier enthusiasm. The trebuchets continue their steady bombardment on the fortress, but the sounds of stone hitting stone, once so powerful and unsettling, now feel distant. It's almost as though everyone is holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. The days drag on like a slow crawl through thick mud, each one seemingly indistinguishable from the last. The monotony weighs on you, and there's no denying it. The siege is starting to break everyone down in ways you hadn't anticipated. The mental strain is insidious, creeping into every thought, every conversation. Even when you're not working, you can't seem to escape the feeling that time is moving too slowly, that nothing is progressing, and the uncertainty is beginning to eat away at your willpower. But inside the fortress, the situation is far worse. The defenders are running on fumes now, their food rations having long since run out. The whispers of desperation have turned into desperate pleas, and the sounds of unrest ripple through the fortress's narrow passageways. There's no escaping the sense of doom that has settled over them. The walls, once symbols of protection and strength, have become the prison that will eventually lead to their downfall. And still, they refuse to surrender. Despite everything, they fight on. It's a strange thing, this sort of stubborn defiance in the face of certain defeat. You wonder if it's a refusal to give in to fear, or if it's just the last vestiges of pride, something too ingrained in their hearts to let go of. They are desperate now, that much is clear, but so are you. The tension in the air is palpable. Both sides are weary, both sides are hungry, and yet neither side can afford to give up, not yet. The cold nights are the hardest. When the sun dips below the horizon and the darkness blankets the camp, it feels like the weight of the entire siege settles over you. You lie in your tent, staring at the low glow of the campfires flickering in the distance, and all you can hear is the wind and the occasional murmur of soldiers settling into their bedrolls. But sleep doesn't come easy. It's not just the cold that keeps you awake. It's the constant hum of uncertainty, the nagging thought that perhaps the walls will never fall, that you will remain here for years, a prisoner of time itself. The thought creeps in like a cold shadow, slowly wrapping around your mind, threatening to drown you in doubt. It's a terrible thing to be in this kind of limbo. You know you can't go back. You've committed to this siege. But what if it doesn't end the way you hope? What if the fortress stands forever? The silence in the camp is broken only by the occasional cough or murmur, but you can feel the restlessness in the air. Everyone is questioning whether this siege will ever end, whether the defenders will finally give up, or whether you'll all be left here, stuck in this endless cycle of waiting. You roll over, trying to escape the thoughts, but they follow you like a relentless tide, pulling you further into doubt. The engineers have not given up. They continue to work, chipping away at the fortress's defenses with the slow, steady rhythm of their work. The tunnels have grown deeper, more intricate, as they seek a weak point in the stone, a place where they can collapse the walls. But still, there's no certainty. Tunnels are fickle things. There's always the chance they won't work, that the defenders will notice the digging beneath their feet, or that the walls will hold, no matter how much pressure is placed upon them. But the work continues, because what else is there to do? There's no retreating, no going back, there's no second chance. It's all or nothing. As the engineers work, their faces are grim, and the air in the tunnels is thick with dust, their sweat mingling with the grime of the earth. You hear them talk of progress, of small successes, of how close they are, but no one can say for sure whether this will be the thing that finally ends the siege. It's an uncomfortable truth that you've come to accept. There are no guarantees. Here, the siege could go on for weeks, months, or even longer. Every day brings a new uncertainty, a new question. Will the fortress finally crumble, or will it stand firm, defying all efforts? It's a thought that eats at you, gnawing at the back of your mind. But still, you wait. There is nothing else to do but wait. You can't ignore the toll the siege is taking on everyone, either. The soldiers are growing thinner, and there's a sense of restlessness that permeates every corner of the camp. Some soldiers have begun to question the cause of it. Or what are we fighting for, exactly? There's no clear end in sight, and the cost of this protracted battle is beginning to outweigh the promise of victory. There are murmurs of rebellion, not just among the defenders, but in your own ranks as well. What if you abandoned the siege? What if you turned around and left, saving what's left of the men and women still capable of fighting? These thoughts are dangerous. They can't be entertained. Not now, not when you've come so far. But the idea lingers, an uncomfortable presence in the back of your mind. How long can you go on? How long can you keep this up? before the siege itself begins to feel like the true enemy. Then, there are the times when you catch yourself thinking of home, of your family, of the simple comforts you once took for granted. It feels like a lifetime ago that you left your home to join this siege. And yet, as the days stretch on, it becomes harder to remember the faces of those you left behind. The memories are starting to fade, slipping away like sand through your fingers. You cling to those fleeting moments, reminding yourself that they're real, that the world outside the siege is still there, waiting for you. But those memories are becoming harder to hold on to. The siege has consumed everything: your body, your mind, your soul. It's as though you've become a part of it, wrapped up in the grind of survival. Everything else, all the reasons you came here in the first place, have blurred. It's no longer about glory. It's no longer about honor. It's about making it through to the end, whatever that might look like. Then, something shifts. You hear it from the scouts' first whispers that the defenders are running low on food, that morale is at an all-time low, that they're starting to fracture from within. You hear it in the conversations that drift across the camp. There's talk of surrender, of negotiations. You can't believe it at first. After all this time, after all the effort you've put into this siege, is it really happening? Are they finally breaking? For the first time in days, you feel a flicker of hope. It's small, but it's there. You don't dare to speak it aloud, but you can feel it in the air. The fortress is finally starting to crumble from the inside. It might not be the trebuchets that bring it down. It might be the desperation of the defenders themselves. The first signs of change are subtle. It starts with the murmurs around the camp, the quiet, almost cautious whispers that grow louder over time. The defenders inside the fortress are beginning to show cracks in their resolve. The last of their food has nearly run out, and they are now depending on whatever scraps they can forage. But it isn't enough. The hunger is gnawing at their insides, and the malnourishment is taking its toll. What was once a well-trained and formidable force now seems disorganized and frail, with soldiers struggling to maintain their strength. From your vantage point in the camp, it's almost hard to believe that this fortress, this symbol of resistance, could be crumbling from within. You've watched it for so long, its sturdy walls, its towering presence. The fortress was an immovable object, a bastion of power that stood against the siege for weeks. And now, like all things, it is beginning to succumb to the relentless force of time. It's hard not to feel a strange sense of relief, mixed with the last traces of disbelief. It's been such a long road, and now, as the pieces begin to fall into place, you realize that the end may be closer than you think. The mood in the camp shifts, though it's still cautious. Everyone is aware that a sudden shift in the enemy's morale doesn't guarantee an immediate victory. You've been down this road before, many times, where it feels like the end is just around the corner, but then the fortress stands strong yet again. But this time, there's something different. The defenders aren't fighting back with the same ferocity. There's no longer a sense of purpose in their actions. Instead, there's an overwhelming sense of dread, of fear. You can sense it from their movements, from the way they drag themselves along the walls. They're no longer invincible. They're just like you, now starving, exhausted, and struggling to hold on. But what truly sets this moment apart is the change in their eyes. You can see it from a distance, the panic, the uncertainty. Something has shifted within their ranks, and now the fortress feels more like a cage than a stronghold. It's clear that they are beginning to break, just as you have been. The reality is undeniable. Now the fortress, for all its resilience, cannot hold out forever. It's only a matter of time before the gates finally fall, and when they do, everything will change. The tension in your camp is palpable. The feeling of waiting, of anticipation, has returned, but this time it's different. There's no longer the constant anxiety of wondering if the walls will ever break. You can feel that the defenders are weakening, and you know that the final confrontation is near. Yet, even with this knowledge, there's still a nagging uncertainty that lingers in the air. The cold, biting winds carry with them the scent of impending rain, and it seems like the weather itself is reflecting the mood of the camp. The nights grow colder, and the soldiers huddle closer around the fire, seeking warmth both from the flames and from the sense of camaraderie that has been so desperately needed during this prolonged battle. You can hear the soft hum of conversations around the fire, most of them centered on the siege and the fortress that has become the focal point of all your efforts. The usual sense of discontent is gone now, replaced by a quiet optimism that you can't quite shake. It's odd, this feeling. You've been here before, so many times, but the outcome was always the same, waiting for the walls to crumble, for the gates to open, for the siege to end. Yet, this time, you can't help but think that maybe, just maybe, this is it. The moment when everything falls into place. But even as hope begins to flicker in your heart, there's the constant reminder of the fragility of it all. The enemy may be faltering, but they aren't defeated yet. You can feel the weight of that reality hanging over you. Every time the trebuchets fire, every time the stones strike the walls, you wonder if this will be the blow that shatters the fortress. Once and for all, but with every strike that misses its mark, or with every stone that only cracks the surface, doubt creeps back in. It's hard not to become disheartened by the seemingly endless nature of it all. You want to believe that this is the final stretch, the last few days before the end. You want to think that victory is within your grasp, but you know that thinking like that could be dangerous. The siege has taught you one thing above all. Certainty is an illusion. The outcome of this battle could change at any moment. What happens if the defenders find new strength? What happens if they've been hiding their reserves, planning for this exact moment? The thought lingers in the back of your mind, and you try to push it away. But it's always there waiting, watching, like the shadow of a storm on the horizon dot inside the fortress. You can almost hear the despair growing louder. There's no longer the sound of soldiers marching in formation, no longer the sound of disciplined commands being given. The fortress has descended into chaos. It's not a physical chaos, but a mental one. The defenders are at war with themselves now. The hunger, the fear, the isolation, it's all starting to break them apart. And yet, they hold on. Even in their weakened state, they refuse to give in. The thought of surrender is too bitter to accept. They would rather fight until the very end, even if that end is certain defeat. There's something undeniably tragic about this. The defenders, though broken, cling to a shred of pride, something that won't let them give in, no matter how much they suffer. It's a sobering reminder that there's more to war than victory. There are always costs, always sacrifices. You know this all too well, and it makes you wonder, when the siege ends, when the dust settles, what will be left of those who fought? What will be left of you? Back in your camp, there's a strange quiet that has settled over the soldiers. It's not the kind of quiet that comes from exhaustion or fear, but the kind that comes from a shared understanding. They know, as you do, that this siege is nearing its end. Whether that end comes through a victory or a crushing defeat, it doesn't matter anymore. The weight has become too much. The soldiers are tired, worn out, and the spark of enthusiasm that once propelled them forward is beginning to dim. And yet, even in the midst of all this, there's something unshakable about their resolve. You can see it in their eyes, in the way they carry themselves. They've made it this far, and they won't stop now, not when they're so close. The final push is coming. You can feel it. You just don't know when, but when it comes, it will change everything. The days have become indistinguishable, and yet, as time stretches on, it feels as though something is beginning to shift, just barely, but enough to be noticeable. You're not sure if it's the constant wear of the siege that has dulled your senses, or if it's the slow, inevitable surrender of the fortress itself that's drawing everything toward a final conclusion. The long march of the Trebuchets continues, their massive stones slamming into the fortress walls, causing the ground to tremble beneath your feet. But there's something different in the air now. The resonance of those strikes no longer carries the same weight it once did. It's as though the walls, which were once so indomitable, are finally beginning to give way. The cracks, once faint and hardly noticeable, have deepened over the past few days. You can see it now from your position. Just outside the camp, the once proud fortress is starting to sag under the relentless assault. The damage isn't catastrophic, but it's certainly noticeable. It's the kind of damage that, with time, will lead to something bigger. It's a slow burn, one that you can almost feel in your bones, and yet it's still not enough. The defenders, weary, hungry, and weak, are holding on with everything they have left. You've seen it in their eyes. They're exhausted, but they're not ready to let go. They're fighting on, not for victory, but for survival. There's a stubbornness in their movements, something defiant. It's clear that they still believe in something, perhaps in their ability to hold out just a little longer, or perhaps in the hope of rescue. But that hope is fading. You can sense it, just as you can feel the hope in your camp growing stronger with each passing day. But there's no way to know how long it will last. A siege like this can turn on a dime, and the longer it goes on, the more desperate both sides become. The tension is palpable, hanging in the air like a thick fog that won't lift. No one dares to speak the words aloud, but everyone knows the end is coming. You can feel it in the air. You can see it in the faces of the soldiers, in the slow, deliberate movements of the engineers, who continue their work with a grim determination, as though they know the battle is almost over and this is their final push. Even the smallest successes, like a small crack in the wall or a slight weakening of the enemy's defenses, feel like moments of triumph, but they're fleeting. As quickly as hope rises, it falls again. The fortress isn't giving up just yet. The defenders, despite their dwindling resources, are still putting up a fight, and that's what makes the wait even more excruciating. It's as if you're standing on the edge of something momentous, but the moment never quite arrives. There are no loud victories, no grand charges, no quick resolution. It's just this slow, constant push-siege warfare at its most brutal, its most grueling. Your muscles ache from the constant work, and your mind is frayed from the endless waiting, but still, you can't help but look at the fortress, at the damage accumulating on its walls, and feel that familiar stir of anticipation. It won't be long now. The inevitable collapse of the fortress is drawing closer. You know it. The soldiers in your camp know it. The defenders know it too, though they'll never admit it aloud. You can feel it in the silence that has begun to settle over them. The sound of the trebuchets is no longer met with defiance. Instead, You hear whispers, fleeting conversations of what comes next, and whether surrender is the only choice left. The very air inside their walls is thick with dread. It's the slow march toward the inevitable. You try to block out the gnawing doubt, the creeping sense of exhaustion that keeps pushing its way into your thoughts. The end will come. It has to. But in a siege like this, even the smallest spark of hope is a dangerous thing to latch onto. So, you try to focus on the task at hand. The next strike, the next stone, the next move. The constant bombardment wears down not just the walls, but the spirits of those within. You've seen it before in other sieges, the gradual breakdown of willpower, the slow fade into madness that comes when the enemy is locked in a room with no exits. Inside the fortress, the defenders are no longer fighting for glory or even survival. They're fighting for something intangible. They're fighting to prove that they can hold out just a little longer, that they can weather this storm and come out the other side. But that feeling is starting to wane. You can tell by the way they move, by the way their ranks have begun to thin, that they're no longer as unified as they once were. The cracks in their walls are starting to show, both figuratively and literally. The food is gone, their weapons are becoming more primitive, and the fortress, though still standing, is starting to lose its sheen of invincibility. But still, you know better than to get ahead of yourself. You've seen this before, the moment when the enemy seems to give up, only to find a new strength in their desperation. The fortress may be crumbling, but it still has a few surprises left in it. You can't allow yourself to become complacent. Every moment, every strike, every movement counts now. The siege has entered its final stages, and the smallest mistake could mean the difference between victory and defeat. You watch as the engineers continue to work on their latest tactic, digging further into the foundation, testing the limits of the wall's stability. Their focus is intense, as if they know that this is their last chance. The work is slow, but it's methodical. They're looking for weaknesses, trying to find the one spot that will cause the entire structure to collapse. Every day, the tension in the camp builds. There's no longer talk of glory, of grand victories. Now, it's about survival. It's about holding on just a little longer, waiting for the moment when the fortress can no longer withstand the pressure. That moment will come. You know it will. The defenders inside may still have some fight left in them, but it's dwindling. Soon, it will be over. You just have to hold on a little longer. The feeling of anticipation has become so thick, it's almost suffocating. Every time the trebuchets fire, every time the stones crash against the fortress, you feel a collective shudder ripple through the camp. You no longer have to look up to see the damage. The sound of the impact is enough to make you aware of the slow, creeping destruction taking place. The fortress, once the symbol of strength and defiance, now seems fragile. It's no longer the looming, intimidating structure it was when you first arrived. Now, it's a fading relic, with cracks in its walls and a weakening foundation. You see it from a distance, that slow erosion of its defenses, and you can't help but wonder, how much longer can it hold out? How much longer can they keep resisting? The defenders inside the fortress are desperate, and you can feel it in the air. Their movements have become more erratic. The once proud warriors who stood tall, ready to defend their home at all costs, now stumble from exhaustion. The hunger has eaten away at their strength, and the deprivation has turned them into shadows of their former selves. You can see it in their eyes. They've stopped looking at you with contempt. Now, they look at you with something else. It's not fear, not yet, but it's something close. a resignation, a quiet acknowledgement that they've come to the end of their resources, that their fight is slowly slipping away from them. You can see it when you look at the cracks in the walls. You can hear it in the distant cries that rise from within. The fortress, a sound that once had the force of defiance but now feels like the last vestiges of hope being scraped away. But despite all of this, the siege isn't over. Not yet. It's still too early to celebrate. There are still dangers lurking. Still the possibility that the defenders could find a way to push back, to rally for one final strike. The uncertainty weighs on everyone in the camp. You've been at this for so long, and the end is so close. But it feels like the siege is stretching into infinity. The days feel like weeks, and the weeks feel like years. Every morning you wake up, already tired from the day before, and brace yourself for another round of the same endless routine. You check the siege engines, make sure the supplies are distributed, and keep watch for any movement in the distance. But the feeling of waiting is starting to drive you mad. It's always the same. The siege drags on, the walls hold, and you wonder if this will ever end. But you've come so far. You can't stop now. You can't back out. You have to keep moving forward. And as the days pass, that small glimmer of hope, that tiny spark that has been flickering for what feels like forever, starts to grow. You hear it from the scouts, the first whispers of victory. The walls are weakening. The defenders are running out of food. The morale is beginning to crack. The whispers grow louder, but you know better than to trust them completely. This could still go on for weeks, maybe longer. The fortress might stand strong yet, but even so, there's something undeniably different in the air. You feel it in the way the soldiers are moving. They're no longer dragging themselves through each day. There's a purpose in their steps now. They're starting to believe, just as you are, that the end is coming. You look at the engineers working on the final phase of the siege, the tunneling. They've made it further than they ever thought they would, and now it's all coming down to this. The walls may hold out, but the foundation is cracked. The defenders may be able to fight for a little longer, but they're slowly running out of options. You can see it in the way they're behaving. There's an urgency to everything now. Every task is completed faster, with a sense of heightened anticipation. It's as though everyone has collectively realized that the end is in sight. You just don't know when it will happen, but it's coming. The stone walls, which have withstood all of your attacks so far, are no longer as imposing. The cracks, the ones that seemed insignificant at first, have grown deeper. You can feel the tension in the air as each new stone impacts the fortress. This is it. This is the moment you've been waiting for. The walls are weakening, the defenders are fading, and you, too, are exhausted. But it's all almost over. You know it. The soldiers in your camp know it. The enemy knows it too. The fortress is a shadow of its former self. What was once a symbol of pride and strength is now on the verge of collapse. It's not over yet. The final confrontation hasn't come. But when it does, it will be swift, and it will be brutal. You can already feel the anticipation building in the pit of your stomach. The final assault is just around the corner, and you can almost taste it. The camp is more alive now than it has been in weeks. The soldiers are gathered together, eyes gleaming with a shared sense of purpose. They know it too. The end is here. The fortress is on the brink of collapse. All that's left is to deliver the final blow. You watch as the final preparations are made. The trebuchets are loaded. The engineers prepare their final touches. The men are gathering, tightening their armor, ready to charge. It's all happening so fast now. The end is within reach, and for the first time in days, you feel something that you haven't felt in a long time: hope. But it's tempered by the knowledge that the end could still be far away. The fortress still stands. The walls are cracked, but they are not down. And until they are, you won't be able to relax. Not until the gates are breached, the fortress taken, and the siege is over. So you wait. You wait for that final moment when the fortress finally crumbles, when it breaks, under the weight of your persistence. You wait for that moment to arrive, and when it does, it will be a moment you'll never forget. The air feels different now, charged with an electricity that hums beneath every step. Every glance exchanged between the soldiers in the camp. The anticipation is suffocating, and for the first time in weeks, you can feel it, this undeniable sense that the end is truly near. The fortress, which had once seemed so impenetrable, now feels like a house of cards waiting to collapse. The trebuchets continue to send their stones crashing into the walls, but now, the walls no longer echo with the same resilience. There's a faint tremor in the air every time a stone hits, a sharp, decisive sound that seems to signal the fortress's slow but inevitable demise. You can see it with your own eyes. More cracks have appeared, and the walls, while still standing, are no longer the towering, formidable barrier they once were. The mortar is crumbling, the stones are shifting, and you know it's only a matter of time before the fortress gives in to the pressure. Inside, the defenders are growing more desperate. Their food has run out completely, and rumors swirl through your camp about the bitter fights breaking out within their ranks. The whispers speak of disarray, of soldiers too weak to lift their weapons, of officers scrambling to maintain what little discipline is left. You can almost hear the frustration in their footsteps. What was once a well-oiled machine is now a slow, faltering beast, struggling against the weight of its own starvation and fatigue. From where you stand, the fortress no longer feels like a threat. It feels like a wounded animal, one that knows its time is running out, but refuses to go down without a fight. It's painful to watch, this slow unraveling. And yet, you know you must continue, knowing that once the walls fall, the fight will truly be over. There's something about the way the defenders move now that speaks of surrender in everything but name. The once determined soldiers have become shadows of themselves, dragging their feet, avoiding eye contact, as though they're afraid to see the truth reflected in one another. Their hope, once unshakable, has been eroded away by the slow march of hunger, isolation, and the relentless bombardment. You can see the fear in their eyes, a silent acknowledgement that the end is near. And yet, despite it all, they keep holding on. It's almost admirable, this refusal to let go. But that stubbornness won't be enough. The cracks in the walls are growing wider. The weight of the siege has already broken their will. And now, the final blow is just a matter of waiting for the right moment. The siege has gone on for so long, and the weight is starting to feel like it could stretch on forever. You can feel it in your body, this strange mix of anticipation and dread. It's like you're caught between two worlds, the world of the camp, where preparations for the final push are underway, and the world of the fortress, where the defenders are just holding on, hoping for a miracle. Every hour that passes, it feels as though you're closer to the moment of reckoning, the final confrontation that will bring everything to an end. You can sense it in the air, the tension, thick and electric, like the calm before a storm. It's been a long time coming, and yet you know that when the moment arrives, it won't be anything like what you imagined. The final assault won't be a glorious, decisive charge. It will be a quiet, tense struggle, the slow crumbling of a fortress that has been on the edge of destruction for weeks. There won't be fanfare, no great battle cries. There will only be the sound of the walls giving way, the quiet collapse of something once invincible. The final push will come, but it will be like the end of a long, drawn-out processor, slow, inevitable fall. The question now isn't whether the walls will break, it's when. How long can the defenders hold on before their resolve shatters? How much longer can the fortress withstand the pressure before it finally collapses under the weight of time? You don't know, none of you do. And yet there's this quiet certainty that it's coming. This certainty that, despite everything, the fortress will eventually fall. It will give way, not in an explosive burst, but in a slow, steady unraveling. And when it does, when the walls finally break, everything will change. But until then, the wait continues. The tension builds with every strike of the trebuchets, every crack that appears in the walls. The fortress is finally showing signs of giving way. The work is almost done. It's only a matter of time. And yet, that knowledge does little to calm the growing sense of unease. It's hard to shake the feeling that there's still something unknown ahead, something that could alter the course of this siege at the very last moment. The fortress may be weakening, but it's still there. It's still standing. And as long as it stands, as long as those walls remain intact, you're left in this strange limbo, caught between hope and fear. The days stretch on, endless and unchanging. The tension never quite releases. It's like holding your breath, waiting for something to give. And when that moment comes, when the fortress finally crumbles, it won't be a triumph. It will be a releaser, long, drawn-out exhale. After a breath held for far too long, you will have fought through the agony of waiting, through the slow grind of time, and in the end, you'll witness the fall of the fortress, not with joy, but with the quiet recognition that it had to happen. It had to come down. And now, all that's left is the aftermath, the quiet that follows a battle won, the silence that falls over a broken world. But for now, you wait. You wait for the final moment to arrive. The quiet before the storm feels heavier than it ever has. You can almost taste the uncertainty in the air, thick with anticipation. The camp, once alive with noise and motion, now seems to move in slow motion. The soldiers stand at their posts, their faces drawn and weary, but beneath the exhaustion, there's something else, the feeling that something momentous is on the horizon. The trebuchets still launch their heavy stones toward the fortress, and with each strike, you hear the unmistakable sound of the fortress beginning to give way. You watch from your position as the stones slam into the wall, the earth vibrating beneath your feet with the power of each impact. But there's no satisfaction in it, no excitement. It's all been too long. The walls are beginning to look fragile, not in the way they once did, but in the way a dying man's breath begins to falter. The cracks run deeper, the stones weaker. The fortress seems to be exhaling its last breaths, and you know the final collapse is drawing near. But it's not just the structure itself that's failing. You can feel it in the camp as well. There's an eerie quiet, as if everyone is holding their breath. The soldiers are no longer speaking in the loud, confident tones they once did. The words they exchange are few, their voices hollow, as though they've all said everything that needs to be said. The fight is in its final stages now, but what exactly will happen when the fortress finally falls? What happens when this seemingly endless siege reaches its final, inevitable conclusion? The thought weighs heavily on you. Will you feel relief? Or will you feel the weight of what it's cost to get here? Inside the fortress, the story is much the same. It's a matter of time. The defenders are no longer organized. Their desperation is written on their faces, in the way they shuffle about the walls, too weak to mount a proper defense. What pride they once had is slipping away, eroded by hunger, exhaustion, and the constant bombardment from your side. You can almost hear the collective sigh of resignation coming from within. They know it's over. They've known it for days now. But still, they hold on. There's something admirable in their persistence, in their refusal to give up despite everything. But it's futile. They are merely waiting for the inevitable, like soldiers standing in a flooded trench, waiting for the water to reach their necks. They've done everything they can. There's nothing left. But in the back of your mind, you know that it could still be worse. You know there's still the chance they could rally, that they might try one last desperate counterattack, one final stand against your forces. There's always that nagging doubt, that fear of an unexpected turn in the tide. It's the same feeling that's been lurking at the back of your mind since the beginning. The same uncertainty that has followed every moment of this siege. It's that sense of never quite knowing when or if the end will come. The walls might crumble, the gates might fall, but what then? What's left after the dust settles? In a way, it's a question you've avoided asking yourself. You've been so focused on surviving, on enduring the siege, that the aftermath has felt like an abstract thought, something that will come when the battle is over. But now, as you stand here, watching the fortress crumble in slow motion, you realize that the aftermath will come sooner than you think. You've invested so much of yourself in this battle, so much of your energy, your time, your will to survive, that the thought of what happens once it's all over feels disorienting. The fortress might fall, but will you feel victorious? Or will you feel empty, hollow, the way a soldier feels after the battle ends but the scars remain? The weight of this siege has already taken its toll on you and everyone else in the camp. You can feel it in the conversations, or the lack thereof. You can feel it in the way people shuffle around the camp, as though they're just waiting for the last blow to fall so they can leave, to put this chapter behind them. But there's no certainty. There never has been. And that's the true toll of a siege like this, the relentless uncertainty. You've spent weeks waiting for the fortress to crumble, for the walls to give way, and yet the feeling of waiting hasn't diminished. It only shifts, constantly shifting, until you realize that you've been waiting for something more than the fall of the fortress. You've been waiting for the end of something much bigger, the end of this long stretch of time, this unyielding sense of being stuck, trapped in the midst of a battle you never quite knew how to end. The realization sinks in, heavy like the stones the Trebuchets have launched, that once the fortress falls, everything will change. There will be no more waiting. There will be no more uncertainty. There will be no more endless bombardment of stones. You'll have to face what's left, what comes after the fall. And as you stand at the edge of this battlefield, watching the final moments of the fortress unfold, you can't help but wonder, will you be ready for it? The defenders inside are already starting to fray at the edges. The desperation in their ranks is becoming more apparent with each passing day. They're not rallying. They're not finding new hope in their cause. They're just holding on, hoping that somehow the siege will end, that they will survive this. But you know better. This isn't a battle about survival anymore. It's a battle about who breaks first. The fortress will fall. It's just a matter of how and when. And when it does, everything will change. You'll never be the same again. None of you will. But for now, all you can do is wait. Wait for that final moment. Wait for the walls to crumble. And wait for everything to change. It's the quiet that fills the camp now. The once loud chatter of soldiers sharpening swords and talking strategy has long since disappeared. The energy that once flowed through the camp has been replaced by a heavy stillness, the kind that only comes when something is about to change. You can feel it, a palpable tension that builds with every passing minute. The fortress, that seemingly indomitable structure that had resisted everything thrown at it, is showing signs of its inevitable collapse. The walls, battered and cracked, no longer stand as tall as they once did. Every strike from the trebuchets seems to make them tremble a little more, sending vibrations through the ground beneath you. The defenders inside, too, seem to have lost the strength that once fueled their resistance. You can almost hear their sighs of frustration, their growing sense of despair. They no longer fight with the same fervor. The hunger, the fear, and the overwhelming sense of hopelessness have begun to sap the will from their ranks. It's only a matter of time now. You know it in your bones. The moment of collapse is imminent. And yet, there's no joy in it, no sense of triumph. There's only a heavy silence, a quiet anticipation that grips everyone in the camp. You look around at the soldiers, their faces worn and tired, their eyes hollow from days of waiting. They are no longer the eager fighters who marched to the gates of this fortress with fire in their hearts. They are just like you, exhausted from the constant siege, the endless waiting, the uncertain end. The atmosphere is thick with the understanding that, while the walls are about to fall, the real cost of this siege will be felt afterward. The battles fought in the field, the stones thrown, the walls breached, all of it seems distant now. What will happen after the final blow? What will happen when the gates finally give way? You wonder if you're prepared for what's to come. The soldiers who stand with you, who have endured so much, may be ready to break the walls, but they have no idea what lies beyond them. The siege has become so much more than just a physical battle. It's become a test of endurance, a battle for the mind and spirit. And now, as the walls crack and begin to buckle under the pressure, there's a collective understanding that the siege is not just about defeating the enemy. It's about surviving the toll it has taken on everyone involved. The fortress may fall, but the scars it leaves behind won't be as easily erased. Inside the fortress, the defenders are already feeling it. There's no longer the sound of the warriors holding the walls, the clashing swords, the cries of defiance, all faded into whispers of survival. You know, from the spies who have been feeding information back to your side, that the defenders have reached the end of their resources. They've been fighting not for victory, but for the chance to make it out alive, if that is even possible. They've been pushed to the very brink, and now the choice looms before them. Give up, surrender, and live, or continue to hold on and face the inevitable collapse of the fortress. It's a difficult decision, one that no one wants to make, but they know, deep down, that their time is running out. The hunger has drained their strength. The walls, once solid, have been cracked, and there's no hiding the reality that the fortress will soon be breached. But still, they hold on. It's that same stubbornness, that refusal to surrender, that continues to drive them, even as it becomes more apparent that holding on is no longer an option. It's a tragic thing to watch them struggle, to see them battle not for glory, but for survival. There's no glory left in this. The fortress has become a prison, and the defenders inside are no longer fighting to win, they're fighting to escape, to outlast their captors. The longer the siege lasts, the more human it becomes. It's not about weapons or tactics anymore. It's about holding on to something, anything, that can keep the fight alive. And yet, despite all of this, the siege continues to push forward relentlessly. The air is filled with the rhythmic sound of the trebuchets, sending stone after stone toward the fortress, each strike a reminder that the walls are slowly giving way. You watch as another boulder flies through the air, crashing against the fortress, sending a cloud of dust into the air. It's impossible to miss the tremor that follows. The impact seems louder, deeper, as though the fortress itself is shaking in anticipation of what's coming next. It won't be long now. It's hard to think that this is all it comes down to. After all this time, after all the waiting, the final collapse will be a mere moment. One strike, one final push, and it will be over. But the weight of it hangs in the air, pulling at your chest. You realize that there will be no victory cheer, no cries of triumph when it happens. There will be nothing but the quiet aftermath, the realization that the battle was fought not for glory, but for survival. The final assault, when it comes, will be quick, but it will not be without consequence. What will you find once the fortress falls? What will be left of the soldiers, of you, of the land? What happens when the dust settles and the siege is over? It's a question that weighs on you as you watch the final moments of the fortress unfold. You wonder if you'll ever be the same after this, if any of you will be. When it ends, what will it leave behind? What will you have sacrificed in the name of survival? The siege has cost you everything. And now, as the end draws near, you're left to wonder, what happens when everything changes? The final days stretch out like an endless horizon, each one heavier than the last. You can feel the weight of it in your bones, in the way your muscles ache and your eyes strain against the harsh light of the sun. But there is something different now. It's not just the weariness that settles over you, it's a sense of finality that hovers in the air. The walls of the fortress are no longer a looming challenge. They're a dying relic, a thing that will soon be gone. The slow, inevitable collapse has begun, and you can almost feel it in the earth beneath your feet. In the way the ground trembles when the trebuchets fire. The sounds that once echoed so loudly now seem softer, as if the very air is holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. The walls crack with a finality you can almost taste. You stand in the camp, watching the soldiers around you. They don't speak much anymore. There's no need for words. Everyone knows what's coming. The end of the siege is in sight, but with it comes the silent realization that nothing will be the same after it's over. You've been here too long. You've endured too much. And though victory feels close, it doesn't taste sweet. It feels heavy. You wonder if the defenders inside the fortress are feeling the same weight, the knowledge that they've fought for so long. And now their time is running out. They, too, must feel the pressure building, the walls crumbling beneath the relentless bombardment. Their last reserves of strength are nearly spent, and their will to continue has all but evaporated. They're not soldiers anymore. They're survivors. And yet, despite it all, there's still that spark, that last ember of resistance that refuses to die. It's in the way they stand on the walls, gazing out at the camp, their faces gaunt but determined. It's in the desperate glances they exchange, hoping against hope that reinforcements will arrive, that the siege will end. But deep down, you know just as they do that, no help is coming. The end is inevitable, and the fortress will fall. The thought of it is both liberating and terrifying. The battle, this long, drawn-out battle will come to an end. But what will be left after it's over? What will be left of the soldiers who have fought so hard for so long, who have poured everything they have into this struggle? What will be left of the land, of the people who have endured this endless siege? There is no real victory here. There's only the relief of knowing that it's finally over, that the siege will end, and life can return to something resembling normalcy. But at what cost? What has this battle done to you, to the others? You stand in the camp, your eyes on the fortress, watching the cracks deepen with each passing day. You think about what you've sacrificed to get here, how much of yourself you've given up to this cause. You wonder how much longer you can keep going. And then it happens. There's a loud crash, a deafening sound that splits the air, and the ground shakes beneath your feet. The wall closest to your position shudders, a massive crack spreading through it like the jagged fracture of a broken stone. The moment has arrived. The fortress is breaking. The first breach has come. You see it in the soldiers' faces as they turn to look. There's no cheer, no cries of victory. There's only the quiet recognition that it's finally happening. You feel it too, that strange, heavy sensation that settles in your chest. The siege is over. The walls of the fortress are crumbling. You can almost hear the defenders inside, their footsteps faltering as they realize what has happened. The end is near. The final assault will come soon, and when it does, the fortress will fall. But there's no joy in it, no excitement. It's not the victory you imagined. It's the end of a long, painful journey, one that has cost more than you ever thought possible. As the walls of the fortress finally begin to collapse under the weight of the assault, you find yourself standing still, as if frozen in time. You've been waiting for this moment for so long, and now that it's here, you don't know how to feel. There's no elation, no rush of triumph, just the slow realization that, no matter how hard you fought, how much you sacrificed, the cost was too high. The fortress has fallen, yes, but what's left? What remains of the world you knew before this siege began? The answer is unclear, and yet it hangs in the air like a thick fog, obscuring everything. You see the other soldiers in the camp, there, faces as somber as your own. They too know that the end has come, but that doesn't mean they're ready for it. They've given everything to this cause, and now that it's over, they don't know what comes next. The fortress has fallen. The siege is over. But for the first time in this long, grueling battle, you feel a deep sense of uncertainty. What will you do now? What will happen to you? What will happen to the land, the people who have been caught in this endless cycle of violence and destruction? The weight of it all presses down on you, and you know there is no simple answer. There will be no easy resolution. The end of the siege is only the beginning of something else, something you're not sure you're ready for. But for now, as the last of the walls crumble, you find yourself standing still, watching it all unfold, knowing that this is a moment that will stay with you forever. The end has come. But what comes after?